In France, President Emmanuel Macron has defended his decision to force through unpopular pension reforms, raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. In a television interview, Macron said he had no regrets about pushing through the bill without a vote, but added he hopes to improve relations with labour unions and involve them in any future reforms. He also stressed there was no way around the changes if France wants a balanced pension fund.
As I speak to you right now, do you think I enjoy doing this reform? No. Do you think I could have done the same as many others before me and sweep this under the carpet? Yes. Maybe. But there is one thing I regret. It's that we weren't able to inform of the need to undergo this reform. So yes, there aren't 100 solutions if we want the pension system to be balanced. It no longer is. And the more we wait, the more it will get worse. And so this reform is necessary. I would have preferred not to, but it's also because of a sense of responsibility.
Tensions remain high in France, where there have been 6 nights of protests, with hundreds of arrests in several cities.
Protesters in Paris are showing no signs of backing down in their fight against French pension reforms. Frustration turned to fire and fury after Emmanuel Macron's government narrowly survived no confidence motions on Monday. The votes only adding to public anger, with strikes and demonstrations flaring up across the country.
It's not really just about pensions, it's about being fed up with everything. They want us to work longer while they are already reducing our salaries. They don't increase our wages, they increase all our charges, electricity, even food. And in the end, why? To work longer for nothing, for a pittance, and to have a pension that I might not even get?
Strikes and blockades at oil refineries are continuing, creating possible fuel shortages. And the streets of Paris remain strewn with rubbish after a 2-week strike by waste collectors. Despite the fierce opposition, Macron's retirement change now looks almost certain to become law. Macron's popularity has plummeted over his pension plans. His personal approval rating is now just 28%. It's a perilous position from which he must regain public confidence and restore calm amid furious French voters.
Well, our correspondent Lisa Lewis is following developments in Paris. Lisa, how have Macron's words in this interview been received in France?
Members of the unions and of the opposition parties here don't seem very happy about what he said. They said he came across as arrogant, he was showing disdain. You know, Emmanuel Macron in his interview, he was trying to take things forward. He said, you know, I want to talk to the unions about other reforms. We're looking at an immigration reform. We are looking at increasing salaries. We're looking at the health sector and the sector of education. But what he did not say, what people were hoping he would say, is that he would maybe, you know, reshuffle the government, dissolve the National Assembly, or, you know, a call for a referendum. That was what opponents were asking for, and unless he said something like that, I don't think anybody would have been happy about his speech anyway.
Now, we've heard this young protester there who said that he doesn't expect to get his pension anyway. But across the board, why has the reaction to raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, just 2 years, been so strong in France?
It's kind of what people feel is the heart of the social security system here. You know, they really are very proud of their social security system in France. It's a question of identity. And also when talking about the reform, it's not the pension age in general, it's the minimum pension age that's being pushed up. Many people work longer anyway already, but it's about, you know, they feel it's a question of social justice. They just feel that people who have a very tedious job should still be able to retire at a younger age so that they can actually spend some time in retirement. And people are just very angry about how the government is going about this, you know, that the government has now used this exceptional constitutional power to push the reform through without a final vote in Parliament. And they really feel that the government is just doing what the government wants and is not listening neither to the people nor to any other parliamentarians.
Lisa, you've got the finger on the pulse there. Where do you expect the protests to go from here?
Well, this is really the big question. Over the past few days, since Thursday last week, there have been protests every day here in Paris, but also in other cities. These were smallish protests, hundreds, thousands of people coming together and right away attacking the police or playing cat and mouse with them, putting fire to certain, to the mountains of waste that are lying on paved walks here in Paris because the waste collectors have been on strike. And all eyes are on tomorrow's day of protests, where obviously opponents are hoping that millions will turn out. The government is now betting on these protesters to go away after a few weeks. You could hear it in the interview. Emmanuel Macron clearly hopes that they can just, pass this sequence, leave this sequence behind and go on to another reform. But the protesters obviously are determined to continue to turn out to show their opposition to this reform.
DW correspondent Lisa Lewis there in Paris. Thank you, Lisa.
And for more, I'm joined now by Thibault Madlan, a journalist from Les Echos in Paris. Thank you so much for joining us. We understand that French President Emmanuel Macron is due to speak later today. What is he expected to say?
We still expect him to say something, which is new as such, because he hasn't spoken since the beginning of the whole reform process. He has let his Prime Minister, Elisabeth Borne, in the front seat. So the news that he's talking is a news in itself. What he's going to say is probably perhaps disappointing for his opponents. He said to his party leaders yesterday that he had no intention to change track or dissolve the parliament, sack his prime minister, or even hold a public referendum, as some people call for. So what he told them is, bring me some new ideas, a new reform agenda in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And from there on, we'll see how the rest of his presidency will work. And it's 4 more years to go.
He has to sell it to the public. The reaction to raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 has been fierce. Why has it been so strong in France?
Well, it's difficult to say. We've had a poll in January at Les Echos, and the result was actually quite puzzling. 61% of the French people thought the reform was necessary because we're living longer and the system that gets more difficult to finance. At the same time, 66% rejected the main idea of the reform to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. So you could argue people might have been convinced if the government had explained better, maybe. I guess also the timing was unlucky. It was after the COVID crisis and within the surge of inflation, in also a context of a war at the doors of Europe. And there was also a tactical mistake from the government. I think they could have perhaps the support of a pro-reform union called the CFDT, and they haven't tried this. And I think that's what explains why the unions are so united in a country where unions are usually quite divided. So altogether, that explains probably the reaction.
Given that, where is the protest movement likely to go from here?
It's hard to tell. We've seen protests and demonstrations that are historically large. In end of January, 1.3 million people went on the streets, which hadn't been seen since 2010. And you see the way the reform has been passed by bypassing the National Assembly makes people even more angry. So it's very hard to tell. The situation is very volatile. You see the pictures on TV of all the protests. We had in France strikes and a period like this, and it can last for weeks and months. So very hard to predict, really.
Thibault Madelin, journalist from Les Echos in Paris. Thank you.